Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. If you were not here this morning or you are just joining in, we are Desiree Alegre, General Secretary of Women Cyberforce, and Sheila Becker, Vice President of Women Cyberforce, and we are your Masters of Ceremony for the European Security Forum.
This afternoon program is focused on AI threats and opportunities, and also post-quantum cryptography. Let's go straight to the first intervention. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it, by Chris Nickerson, CEO of LARES. Chris has spent the last 23 years of his career leading, inspiring, and apparently also sometimes irritating the security industry. It's a great pleasure to count on his participation. Please, Chris, join the stage.
Hi. Probably have to first start with apologies. One, I'm very hot because I live at 3,100 meters up in the mountains. Also, I live there because I don't like Americans probably as much as everyone else does. So apologies for that. Apologies that my Luxembourgish will never be good enough, so I'm just not going to go there. And from there, we'll talk about something maybe a little more interesting. So that's me. That's my family, plus her. That's part of my career path, just to say that I've been in the industry for 25 plus years, explicitly focused on security. I've been a practitioner all over the place. I've run large global networks, international networks. We've created standards across the globe. We've created the first standard for penetration testing that's been adopted by everyone from organizations like NIST to other governmental bodies. We've started large strings of conferences, really just to say this is what I do, it's what I live, it's what I breathe, and it's what I'm passionate about. I recently have found myself that after 13 years of the company that we've been curating, we've joined a company named Demovo, which operates in 120 different countries. We're now part of a very large global organization, and we're really enjoying our time spending more and more time understanding how security is perceived across the world. At the end of the day, a computer's a computer, an attack is an attack. They don't care about borders or language or boundaries or companies or any of those things. So what we want to try and talk about is, what are we going to do to get out of this seemingly deep hole that we continue to dig, right? I don't believe that just simply adding more technology is going to be the answer. So what did our company do? Well, we do things like pen testing. I'm sure you've heard of attacking networks to see how they respond. We do things like bug bounties and application security. We do things like social engineering. We assess risk for a living. We understand what the risk is, how to avoid it. This creatively, we can say that we do incident response. When people get compromised, they bring us in because it's clearly a bad day. And finally, we also do some physical security. As you can see, not everyone is at the same level. But really what we want to try and talk about is, what's this thematic problem that we continue to see in security? And to me, I think one of the problems is the way that we observe data. Has anyone ever seen graphs like this? Like a graph that says, we blocked 958 bad things. We've observed 4 warnings. Now, it feels great to look at those graphics, right? You feel like you're informed, but unfortunately, it doesn't actually tell you anything. If I was to say I blocked 495 punches, but I was punched 1,995 times, I definitely lost the fight. And so we have to try and figure out, how are we going to measure that? Right? How are we going to improve the way that we measure so that we can make more informed decisions? It's not about AI solving the world. It's not about analytics solving the world. It's about understanding that the analytics that we have today are almost large-scale useless. So how else do we measure programs? I'm sure everybody's seen these 3- and 4-letter bad words. We've also probably measured our programs against, which I think this is hilarious when, just as a practitioner, when they say, how did you determine what tool you were going to pick? And if you just take Gartner out of the word, you literally respond to somebody with magic. I used magic to determine what we were going to secure ourselves with because that magic quadrant seemed like the right choice, right? This to me is a data problem. So we have to kind of understand the attackers. We have to understand ourselves. And if we can understand the attackers and we can understand ourselves, you get the obligatory Sun Tzu quote to say that we need to understand not only the battlefield that we persist in, but how we are going to attack the battle. So how do attackers work? About 7 years ago, I got started with the MITRE organization on a global project to start deconstructing how attackers operate. One of the things that we found is when using this model, everything changes all the time. There's always an update to compliance. There's always a new compliance. There's always a new thing in the Magic Quadrant. So what we could say empirically when we look at the data is that defense changes all the time. So it's very hard for us to have adequate coverage on something that's constantly changing, right? If doors are opening and closing constantly, like being able to assess that at speed and at scale really isn't a viable solution. But what is a viable solution is that attackers do the same thing every time. We have the same cadence. We first have to try and figure out what we're attacking, right? Reconnaissance phase. We have to take a look at it. We have to go, okay, these ports are open. We have to then start understanding what vulnerabilities may exist. From those vulnerabilities, can we attack it? Is it something that we're leveraging logic? Maybe I'm guessing a password. Maybe it's something that it's exploitable. And then once I get to that stage of getting that first level of access, I always follow the same methodology, right? To me, being a little bit more pragmatic, coming from the world of being an attacker, I feel like that's something we could more easily defend against, something that's very consistent, right? If we know that you're going to be at point A, point B, point C, point D, every time, we can get observations of each one of those points and be able to determine how well we're doing. So what we set out to do at MITRE is classify what the most common tactics for attack were. Now, one thing that you'll notice about this chart, not only is it an eye chart, but when you take a look at it, if you do a search, there's only 6 times in the entirety of all of these different things that attackers do that mention exploitation. 6. So we also have to now think most attacks do not require exploitation. So the things that you have that are stopping exploitation, we might be able to disprove the theory that they're even worthwhile because most attacks don't use exploitation. They use common tactics. Now, that's not to say throw away your AV at XDR, but what it is to say is that we've raised the bar high enough now that we need to start observing different sets of data. Does that somewhat make sense? Maybe. Cool. The easy way to do it, to start using this chart, is see how I've laid out these columns, right? We want to understand here, exfiltration. I want to understand what tools of mine would actually see one of these techniques. If the bad person gets in and they're stealing a bunch of data or they're moving laterally in the environment to crypto lock something, what tools do I have that are going to potentially see that? Can I see it? Do I have blind spots there? Do I need new technology? Do I have better process? Do I already see it and just not take action? So these are the measurements we start to look at. Now, again, probably it's the inner Canadian in me, because I have a dual passport now because of my Canadian wife, that I say sorry a lot. I'm horrible at Excel, and I'm even worse at graphic design. But this is a very simple way of taking the concepts of what defenses you have and trying to map them back to the techniques that attackers are using, right? What we are doing here is providing the first version of effectiveness of your program. GDPR, NIST, all of these other programs, they're awesome for being able to understand how well you've designed your program. They do not tell you about effectiveness at all. You could have the perfectly built Ferrari and no gas in it, and it doesn't go anywhere, and you go, why did I spend all this money? So what we try and do here is we try and deconstruct. We try and add that in. As we start to do that, if we're saying, oh, maybe somebody's stealing credentials, we can easily go back to credentialed access and we can say, all right, the logs, the XDR, the endpoint decryption, those are all the places that I could find that technique. The technique happens all the time. Let's measure it and see how well we do. As you start to measure these things, you start to get a real understanding of the performance of your tools. The next generation of security, the way that the next generation of security practitioners and owners and implementers will have to work is that security is not a binary. Security is a performance engineering concept. Are my tools performing? Yes or no is not a good answer. It's sometimes, maybe, all the times, consistently, they're degrading, they're improving. It's a performance engineering school of thought. It's not about stopping attackers. It's about if I have the right coverage and I have the right abilities and I can measure the performance, I have a viable understanding of whether I can defend myself or not. Now you can make all sorts of pretty dashboards around this, and everyone knows dashboards sell concepts. But being able to just simply break down these techniques and understand what an adversary is doing, how well that adversary works. Now, I could go back and I could deconstruct anything that's on the news, fancy Flamingo Panda 6 or whatever they called it yesterday, or whatever APT group this, or this nation state adversary, or what NSO does versus the NSA does to other countries. You can just pick apart their tactics, measure them against your controls, and say, this is how well they do attacking us. But this is just kind of the surface of our problem, right? We don't have telemetry from our devices. Again, we have a whole bunch of graphs that say X, but not out of Y, right? We're literally just tricking ourselves into believing that the program is being successful without having some type of way to measure a baseline. Effectiveness is obviously something that most people are concerned with in a security program, right? What does the telemetry give us when we're talking about effectiveness? What does using a philosophy like this give us? Well, we can start to understand tactics, we can deconstruct groups, we can understand performance. I mean, imagine being able to have the data, because all of us have probably replaced, AV or XDR on the host in our environment, at least at one point in our career, right? Where you've just decided that one product just doesn't work as well anymore, and you're going to now move to another product, and a global enterprise project happens to reconstruct this defense. What if we had the data to prove it? What if we had the data to say, I measure this so often, I can start to see the decay. And before it gets so bad that it harms the organization, we can choose and make those decisions. Data empowers our ability to be effective. Quality of data, right? These are all basic performance engineering concepts. If we have quality data, it's great. If we have a quality brand, it's great. But if we don't have quality people, what do we have, right? We need to be able to also understand that these controls, not only are they electronic, not only do we just hope that the cyber AI brain fixes it for us, but we have to empower our people to get better. Now, if I can say I tested these techniques and someone in my security operations center was not as good at protecting this thing, but really good at protecting something else, I could auto route that ticket and the incident would be over faster. I could also go back into their professional development and say, if you learned these things, you would be able to accelerate your own career, right? Again, more data, more empowerment, better decisions. Instead of making decisions for people, we just want to measure to make sure those decisions can be informed and improved. Obviously, you can get lots of stuff from quality of data. Whether it's trying to understand commits, whether it's trying to understand how many times you've changed something, whether a rule gets turned on or off, or whether malware is in one piece of the environment or not, all of these things are not something to make a new decision because of. It's just data for you to aggregate and look at and say, is there a theme here? And if there's a theme, we need to be observant of it, and we need to try and improve the performance. Finally, efficiency. Right? Everyone knows the urgent and unimportant idea. There's lots of urgent and unimportant in security, right? Just because this host got compromised, does it really matter? Can you prove that it matters? Because let's say I had excellent abilities to detect once somebody stole credentials, and I had excellent abilities to stop their lateral movement. Maybe the initial compromise wouldn't matter at all, because I know that they would already fall into my net. So we have to look at those things, and we have to understand not only availability and consumption, but how do we create efficiency in environments? So all of this is really to say that the concepts that I think that we're using today to try and stack 100-euro notes at the front of the door to block attackers, instead of it being a technology problem, might just be a data problem. And if we start to look at it as a data problem, we might find that the stuff that we have really can protect us once we understand if it works or not. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nickerson. It was a great introduction to our afternoon program. The title of our next presentation is Privacy-Preserving AI. What does that mean? And we are pleased to welcome Alain Hirtzig, Head of CyberLabs Cyberforce post-Luxembourg. He is in charge of the development of innovative security solutions to enhance the security posture of post-Luxembourg and its worldwide customers. Please, Mr. Hirtzig, stage is open.
Thank you for this introduction. So I'm happy to be here to tell something completely different than Chris. So Chris is doing the good speech. My background is engineer, so I'm going to do an engineering presentation. Sorry for this. I try not to lose you within the first 5 minutes. I will try to go to 10. So my goal is to present to you our journey from simple data analytics to a modern approach of privacy-preserving data analytics. When we started detailed data analytics a couple of years ago, so if I talk a couple of years ago, this means 10 years plus, GDPR was not yet compelling. So this was nice because you could play on data. You did not have to care too much on privacy. Still, as a telco, and our regulatory friends are there, we still had to respect some limitations. So you could not keep data for longer than 6 months, especially not in clear text. But okay, cool. You have the data, you can use it, you can play on it. So over the time, we have been creating, updating, improving our own models to detect a number of security use cases linked to our telco world. So I'm coming from telco worlds. I don't care too much at this stage on purely IT, but we're coming back more to that later. So the use cases we have in place today and are still improving, they cover typical telco issues like telco fraud. So ping calls you get all the time lately, call spoofing attacks we had in Luxembourg lately from fake police numbers. We are dealing with spam and phishing on SMS, which is something nice because you don't have the same capabilities than on email where you have headers and sources and trust. No, you only have the message by itself, so you have to do natural language detection, this kind of stuff. And last but not least, one of our major topics is telco security protection. So what we are doing is we are detecting attacks on our roaming interfaces to our international partners. Those attacks are used today to attack operators like we are, but also end users. They can be used to intercept calls, messages, to do location update, to track users. So this is a real threat to us. So as I said before, at the beginning, data privacy was not our first concern. The first concern was go to the actual issues. We were a small team, so the data access was limited to a really small team of data analysts. We had audit logs, so we were safe. We could prove what was going on. And since the beginning, we had no known data leakage. So you will tell me privacy is not good. I agree. We increased our privacy, so things have changed, and yet we still don't have a single data leakage, which is good. In parallel to our security approach, telco security approach, we had another team inside Post Luxembourg, which was already dealing on data analytics and business intelligence. They had their own data lake, their own analysts, their own security and privacy concerns, their own customers, being them internal or external, and they had their need for our own data. So here is where the stuff starts. Because, as we all know, the quality and the quantity of data is one of the most important factors to build advanced and powerful machine learning applications. So the need for connecting islands, data islands through data sharing, has become more and more important. However, data sharing process raises up two serious issues. First one is privacy leakage, and second one is data abuse. If we add on top of all this our regulatory constraints and the privacy-preserving acts like GDPR, CCPA, and HIPAA, and others, well, we are facing new challenges. We know that even if we have more and more data and we have more and more big data approaches, the single data islands will never disappear. Every team, every company will try to preserve its own data in its own environment. And we also know that the only way to get value out of this is to share our data between companies. So we started on the left side. We needed to ramp up a little bit and move ahead to be able to share within Post Luxembourg our own data in a secure way. The first technology we tried to use was anonymization. What is anonymization? Anonymization is a way to remove private information, to impersonate your data in order to share it with other entities. This allows to reduce or to remove fully the regulatory constraints. So it's nice. You can get rid of your GDPR because you are not anymore using private data, personal data. With this process, you can then simply transfer the data to other parties that will use your data, your anonymized data, to do their analytics and get interesting results. But we still have one major issue on anonymization. If we do full anonymization, our data gets useless. So if I take my data set, I do full encryption, I drop my private key, we are good. We are safe, we will not disclose anything, but my data partner will do the same, and we can never do correlation between those data sets. That's an issue. So we needed to step back a little bit, and we introduced something which is called encryption-enhanced pseudo-anonymization. Whoa, I know, I said engineering, I'm losing you, I know I will do it quick. So pseudo-anonymization has been defined by GDPR. GDPR says, word by word, data is pseudo-anonymized if it cannot be attributed to a specific data subject without the use of separately kept additional information. So we suppose that the data provider, the one who's generating the data, will be the only one to have that additional information to decrypt the content of the data. Pseudo-anonymization consists in anonymizing partially your data. So you have different techniques like deleting, masking, grouping, encrypting certain values, and then you will group those entities in larger groups, which will not allow you to go back to the individual data set. So this is nice, you can share, you can do data analytics on it, we are good. On the bad side is you need to do this task for every machine learning use case you have in place, so you will run different anonymization techniques on the same data set. And there we go back to the additional information. As long as you are able to keep your additional information, your data is safe. but the more data sets you encrypt, you anonymize, the more data you leak, you publish somewhere. And the more possibilities you give to the outer world to reconstruct your data. So the biggest risk linked to pseudo-anonymization is the re-identification of the additional data. That's why pseudo-anonymization is fine, but it's not yet the ultimate solution. We have on pseudo-anonymization a trade-off between data effectiveness on one side and data privacy on the other side. So you have to find your own balance on where you want to go. Anonymization is still using somehow, well, if you use anonymization for machine learning and AI, you still use somewhere clear text data. After your anonymization, everybody can read your data. You will not see your actual age, for example, of 44 years, but you will see an average range between 40 and 45, but still you can read it. So the question is, can we go technically beyond this, let's call it limitation, and run machine learning analytics while better preserving data privacy? And there we go to privacy-preserving AI. Privacy-preserving AI is not doing anonymization in front of the AI, but the goal is to have a secure way to process your data without any additional actions beforehand. In order to preserve privacy-preserving AI, you have to fulfill four main pillars, four main constraints. The first one is you have to preserve your training data. So the training data, as you know, is what you use to train your model and to get at the end valuable outputs. If your training data is lost, you have no longer so many control on what is happening. Inputs and output data privacy are easy because you need to protect your private data. This is given by GDPR and other regulations. And output privacy is, well, you want to preserve your results. You created some value. You don't want to lose this. Finally, model privacy. Well, the model data model, it's your IP. It's your knowledge. It's your money. It will, if you lose your model, your business plan can be lost. So you have to know that your model is subject to theft, or can also be subject to model extraction attacks using different techniques if you expose your model in a bad way. The pseudo-anonymization we have seen in the previous slide does not guarantee any of those four pillars. Training data, it's clear somewhere, so you can training data and input data are subject to re-identification. So if you have the additional information, you have all the data. And as anonymization would be used as input for machine learning, well, the output privacy and the model privacy are not really part within the scope of the anonymization. So I will quickly go now over the four biggest technologies that exist today to perform secure computing and see if they can be used for PPAI. The first, let's call it rather technique, is homomorphic encryption. I like homomorphic encryption because it's easy to explain. You encrypt your data, you send it somewhere, someone is processing your data and using a model, you get some encrypted results back and you are the only one to decrypt them. That's cool, that's nice. So you don't lose any of your input and output data, but you have some limitations on homomorphic encryption. You can only use it for simple operations like additions and multiplications. Maybe in modern machine learning, this is not sufficient. A second technique is multiparty computing. Multiparty computing has partially the same limitations than homomorphic encryption. You can only do additions and multiplications, but for different reasons. The reason is that you will split your input data set, you will distribute it to different computing nodes that will do a part of the job for you. They will send you back your results, and you will be the only one to be able to see the full result. So you don't reveal your input data, you don't reveal the full output data. The next one to consider is federated learning, which is based on a fully different approach. In federated learning, you will use your data model and you will push it to all the participants of the federation, and those participants can be any device. Google has a project pushing it to cell phones, to smartphones. So, for example, meaning that in federated learning, anyhow, your model is out in the wild. You give it to all of your participants. The way it works and the way it can work is that each participant will do local calculation and local update of your model if you need it, and will share this one with the central FL infrastructure. The last one I want to tackle quickly is TE, Trusted Execution Environment, which is a fully different approach. In TE, you don't care about how you do, well, you don't care, how you protect your data. What you're going to do, this is hardware security. So you will upload your input data and your model inside a secure enclave, which is protected in hardware in different, well, you have Intel SGX, for example. You have also other solutions from IBM and from AMD. In this secure enclave, you can do your calculation as you would do it in clear text. The good point is that only your data provider can see your data, the clear data, and he's the only one to see the output. Okay, so those are the four major parts, and I'm running out of time, which is great. The issue we have on any of those four techniques is that none of them can fulfill the four pillars of data privacy. The biggest issue you have is the training data, which you will need to protect by using additional techniques like differential privacy, and I'm sorry, I'm running out of time to cover this. So you will anyhow need to build some aggregation of the different technical solutions to fulfill everything. So where do we stay at POST today? Yes, we do anonymization. Yes, we use some of those techniques. But also, I also want to emphasize that we are participating in a research program that's trying to combine, well, to solve the limitations from HE and MPC. And it seems that this solution, which seems to be the first one worldwide that could solve this, the problem on the non-polynomial calculations of HE and MPC. The documents, the publication has been released last July, so if you want to have details, I would be able to share them with you. To summarize, any universal implementation must take into account the scalability, the universality, and the security concerns to meet the requirements of your data providers and consumers in regards to your dataset size, the coverage of existing and future machine learning algorithms, and be resistant to attacks. So we can see this as an unsolvable technological barrier, but we prefer to see this as a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Although I think I'm quite happy, 15 minutes complaints about regulatory constraints and not one single time mentioned ILR and my team. So that's great. So the next speaker is the director of Mastercard's European Cyber Resilience Center, the ECRC, started operations in 2020 and has been developed to protect Mastercard's network, its customers and consumers by strengthening public, private and regulatory collaboration and enhancing cyber resilience across Europe. As he couldn't join us here in person today, let's connect to Davy Cox, who will present cyber resilience and public-private partnership. David, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you very fine. So the floor is yours then.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. So you've heard I'm Davy Cox, the director of Mastercard European Cyber Resilience Centre, which is also known as the ECRC. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity of speaking with you all today at the European Security Forum. I just wish I could have been there to see you all in person rather than you seeing me on this huge screen. But it's fantastic that we're able to meet again face to face, and long may that continue. So just a brief background on me before we begin. So until July of 2020, I was a law enforcement officer. And so for over 20 years in the UK across a range of disciplines, and investigated everything from drugs to fraud and money laundering, but predominantly in the area of cybercrime, working within the UK's National Cybercrime Unit, which is a part of the National Crime Agency. And during the last few years of my law enforcement career, I was the lead for industry engagement and led the UK Strategic Cyber Industry Group, which ensured that the UK law enforcement aligned its resources to combat the most significant cyber threats, working with industry as one team with one goal. I was also the National Crime Agency lead for protecting business from cybercrime attacks and the UK's National Policing lead for preventing cybercrime. And this was a really fascinating and interesting part of my career, seeking to try and divert those individuals on the edge of crime to a positive pathway, recognizing that we couldn't just arrest our way out of the problem of cybercrime, and really trying to stop those young people before they took the path to becoming a criminal. And it was interesting to hear earlier the challenges that we all face in recruiting cyber professionals. And I truly believe that education and teaching the ethical use of cyber tools will bring us the talent we need rather than producing the talent that we're forced to defend against. But before I get into the presentation properly, let's first have a look at why cyber resilience is important to us. And with that, we'll have a look at some of the figures. So we're seeing the estimated costs from cybercrime increasing. As we prepare to combat, the estimated spending is projected to be around $5.22 trillion within the next 5 years, with $3.86 million being the average cost of a data breach. Now, that's not just the cost of fraud or the data breach itself. It also includes fines, losses in share prices as consumer confidence deteriorates, rebuilding of infrastructure, etc., etc. And even this figure, though, is artificially lowered owing to the sheer number of cyber attacks. It's much likely that this figure is higher when dealing with larger multinational companies. It's expected that $1 trillion will be invested or projected to be invested over the next 5 years. But is it invested correctly? Value for money and relevance for money are key, along with ensuring that you're targeting those resources appropriately. And we'll speak a little bit later about ransomware, but the figure in the bottom left-hand corner of 11 seconds one business falls victim to a ransomware attack is quite frightening. But all businesses have to evolve and adapt, and that's not just to the functions they perform, but also the ecosystems they seek to protect. When looking at finance, we're no longer part of a finite four-party model, but rather an exploding ecosystem with infinite points of vulnerability. As such, we must safeguard the trust that was present within the four-party model and ensure that the same level of consumer trust can exist in this new environment. So in the early ecosystem, network connections between stakeholders were clearly defined and protected according to industry standards and protocols. Physical acceptance environments reigned prior to digital expansion. The risk of potentially widespread large-scale fraud and cyber attacks was limited, with fraudsters struggling to access well-protected connections in predominantly physical acceptance environments. Now, in the expanding ecosystem, there was a significant growth in third-party providers, increasing the number of undefined connections between stakeholders. Unprotected emerging digital and cyber technology became fertile breeding grounds for criminals and fraudsters who really capitalized on digital cyber growth, exploiting the increasing points of vulnerability to conduct attacks on a larger scale. So we move forward into the evolving ecosystem. We fully embrace third-party suppliers and enhance consumer and customer convenience with the growth of Internet of Things. This has also led to an explosion of digital players, applications, and devices, continually creating infinite and more undefined and often inadequately protected connections to other stakeholders. The ecosystem is under perpetual threat of widespread attack from IoT as IoT continues, and it continues to create these infinite points of vulnerability. And as businesses, we do our best to secure our network against the threats from cybercrime. But as a result of the expanding and evolving ecosystem, all of us are at risk of an attack, whether that be from a breach to one of our third-party suppliers in a supply chain attack. And that's even for those that have strong individual protections in place. And this was recently highlighted in the SolarWinds exploit. But supply chain attacks don't need to be as sophisticated as that breach to cause us real harm. The recent Ticketmaster breach and British Airways cases really highlight, as they were breached to third-party suppliers and they were unaware of it until it was too late. With Ticketmaster, they were fined £1.2 million following a vulnerability in a third-party chatbot that they were using to assist their customers. And British Airways will find £20 million following the breach caused by compromised credentials of a third-party supplier who was accessing their BA network remotely. It's important to note as well that both of these companies received significant reductions in the fines due to the impact COVID had on their day-to-day businesses. It's clear from the incidents that we've seen in the past that cybercrime has the ability to threaten an individual, a business, or a nation's security, financial health, economic well-being, and as we've also seen in the past, our democracies. But whilst we must look ahead to anticipate what challenges new technologies, legislation, and criminal innovation may bring, we must not forget to look behind us. So-called new threats continue to emerge from vulnerabilities in established processes and technologies. The longevity of cyber threats are clear, as many long-standing and established modus operandi persist, despite all of our best efforts. Some threats of yesterday remain relevant today and will absolutely continue to challenge us tomorrow. And phishing and other social engineering techniques remain a significant part of many cyber attacks and are often the initial point of compromise, leading to introduction of malware onto our networks, with attackers recently exploiting the coronavirus pandemic to prey on people's fears to entice them to take the bait. And as it's been mentioned earlier in a number of talks today, we rely on our employees to be the guardians of our networks, and that's why it's vitally important to educate all that work in and for your businesses so that they can identify those common phishing tactics and resist clicking on a link or opening an attachment from an unknown source. Many attacks are now being conducted through crime as a service business model, with many cyber criminals using the dark web to buy access to tools, skill sets, or entry points into businesses to commence a cyber attack. And cyber criminals are increasingly bundling or selling access to systems they have compromised in order to deploy secondary malware, and many also partnering with ransomware groups to deploy their ransomware. And even though it may not be the initial attack vector, ransomware maintains its reign as the most widespread and financially damaging form of cyber attack. In 2020, we also saw the evolution in ransomware, with criminals now moving away from simply putting ransomware on a machine, encrypting your files, and then waiting for the money to be paid. They now focus on targeting larger businesses and actively pressurizing companies by taking files from your systems before encrypting your machines and threatening to publish the sensitive data or documents online, with the negative media interest and share prices that would inevitably bring. And Mastercard partners with Europol, the project that they have called No More Ransomware, to provide solutions to those businesses and individuals that fall and foul to ransomware. But as we know, not every type of ransomware currently has a solution. We're also seeing the scale and speed of attacks increases with attack automation and the speed of computations and communications. New opportunities are becoming available to attackers, particularly with businesses accelerating the adoption of cloud technologies due to the ongoing worldwide pandemic. And for cyber criminals, increasing scale and reach is one of their aims. They want to be able to cause the most impact to the most businesses or individuals with the least effort. And that's just to maximize their reach, maximize their success, and if applicable to them, maximize their profits. Now, advanced threat actors are also using the advances in technology through machine learning and AI-powered malware to create powerful malicious codes that seek to evade even the most sophisticated of our defenses, using AI to conceal the intent of malicious code until its intended business or target victim is reached, making it almost impossible to stop or to reverse engineer. And of course, I can't talk about AI without mentioning the emergence and rise in the production of deepfakes and the new generation of digitally manipulated media, with cyber criminals coming up with new ways to assume your identity or creating fictitious identities from scratch. They have the ability to get through or pass online verification processes. But just as the attackers are using AI, so can we. And so can all security professionals. The integration of AI systems and machine learning is the next big development in the sphere of information technology. And there are many benefits to this integration. For example, using data previously collected from attacks and indicators of compromise to assist us in predicting possible risk, potential future attacks, and prioritizing threat notification and vulnerability management. Setting up tasks for AI can also reduce human error when monitoring and analyzing large amounts of data, which inevitably frees up this essential and expensive workforce to focus on other tasks that would benefit from human input. However, cyber criminals don't have to trust AI in the same way that security professionals must trust it. And so we're in a place where we must ask, how much can we rely on reliably trust AI cybersecurity tools to provide explanations to us, or to be not influenced by backdoor attacks or data poisoning? Therefore, at present, we have to maintain human oversight of processes and trust the experience that you have in your human resource, whilst being slightly suspicious of the frameworks used to train AI models, including the inputted data and the results that they produce. But as well as trust, we also need time before AI can replicate or replace our security workforce. Researchers are predicting that AI will outperform humans in many activities in the next 10 years, from translating languages, writing high school essays, and even driving trucks. However, that research also indicates that there's just a 50-50 chance of AI outperforming humans in all tasks within 45 years and of automating all human jobs in the next 120 years. It's quite frightening, really. So as cybercrime and cybercriminals continue to mature and become more audacious, we can see that they're shifting their focus to larger and more profitable targets. So to tackle it and them, we must be equally audacious in order to meet the challenges head on. In July 2020, Germany took over the EU presidency, with Angela Merkel giving a keynote speech to the EU Parliament on their key priorities for the presidential term. Chancellor Merkel highlighted the need for digital sovereignty within EU member states and to ensure that all member states committed to digitalisation to give stability to the region. And by committing to digitalisation, the EU will be able to protect its democracies from cyber threats. And all this is underpinned by the ability of its citizens, and in that also read businesses, to share information, knowledge, and therefore intelligence. The statement made by Christine Lagarde, the President of the European Central Bank, emphasises the risk to cybercrime and the stability of the financial markets and any liquidity crisis that could be triggered by such an attack. And Mastercard recognised this and shared the concerns of European leaders, setting out a plan to increase its capabilities within Europe to support its market resiliency efforts, and announced the formation of the European Cyber Resilience Centre. As you heard earlier, we announced it earlier last year. So to answer the top concerns of government, policymakers and regulators, the aim of the ECRC, which is based at the heart of Europe in Belgium, is to ensure that we protect our network, customers and consumers by strengthening our collaboration and enhancing resilience across the region, with a long-term vision to become a centre of excellence that protects people, property and business. Because when we work together and collaborate and share threat intelligence, we will enhance our ability to respond and adapt to those adversaries whilst helping our partners to do the same. Therefore, by working together, we will have that security in unity. When establishing the objectives for the ECRC, I wanted to build a set that would focus our minds and work on what was really important to Mastercard and those we work with and for. And so I formed a 4P structure. And these 4 Ps are to prepare, prevent, protect, and pursue. So the first P is to prepare, and that's to prepare our business and that of our customers by strengthening relationships, building capacity through regionalising security assets, and increasing our European on-soil options and improving our capabilities through training and exercise testing to further enhance and sharpen our responses. The next 2 Ps kind of run together, and they are to prevent and protect our company, customers, and consumers from harm through the identification of threats and the mitigation and limitation of breaches. Building a team that has embeds with our Security Operations Centre and works closely with our Fusion Centre within the United States to have a follow-the-sun model to security and incident management. And then the final P is to pursue, and that's to pursue those that will seek to cause us harm by sharing the information and threat intelligence we obtained from the previous 3 Ps with our customers, central banks, and law enforcement partners. Because by sharing that information on the threats targeting Mastercard and the detail of any indicators of compromise and our responses to them, we will collectively improve all of our defence capabilities and raise the cost to cybercrime for the attackers rather than just bearing that cost ourselves. So the ECRC brings representatives from teams across Mastercard to accelerate that intelligence sharing and lead a joint response to crisis and major incidents by bringing all of those competencies together under one roof. It also provides a single point of contact for public authorities, supporting existing relationships, nurturing new ones, and driving growth within Europe. Well, that's it from me, brief 15 minutes. I'd like to once again thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Again, sorry I couldn't be there in person. It would have been great to meet you, and I hope the presentation was useful to you.
Thank you, David, for this very insightful contribution. And now, live from Tokyo, we are connecting to Mihoko Matsubara, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Chief Cybersecurity Strategist at NTT Corporation. She will share with us her point of view in cybersecurity lessons learned from Tokyo 2020 and COVID-19. Mihoko is a prolific writer and has published several articles, a cybersecurity book from the Shinshosha Publishing CO, which won a JFY 2020 award by the Okawa Foundation for Information and Telecommunication. Hello, Mihoko.
Hi.
The stage is yours.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. So I'd like to talk about cybersecurity lessons learned from Tokyo 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic. So Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics and the Paralympic Games faced unprecedented challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. Even though that Japan had some advantages to be able to host the 2019 G20 Osaka Summit and 2019 Rugby World Cup to test Japanese cybersecurity capabilities to protect a huge international event from potential cyber attacks. But thanks to the international and domestic public-private partnerships and lots of cyber exercises and the G20 and Rugby World Cup back in 2019, Tokyo 2020 went very successfully, and it faced no disruption caused by any cyber attack to the operations of Tokyo 2020 during the games. The only exception was 1 hour inaccessibility to the organizing committee website on July 22, but it was not caused by a cyber attack. It was caused by a system trouble in Akamai. And Dr. Brian Gantz contributed an article on Tokyo 2020's cybersecurity, and he praised the cybersecurity of Tokyo 2020 as a success story given by the aggressive preemptive measures to take. So now Japan is very happy and also very much looking forward to sharing our lessons learned to prepare for Paris 2024 and Los Angeles 2028. However, unfortunately, we are becoming more vulnerable in terms of cybersecurity during the pandemic. Why? Because we spend more time online during the pandemic to stay connected with our colleagues and family and friends and to be innovative. But it also expanded the attack surface to cyber attacks, and the ratio to click phishing or spear phishing emails went up drastically from 5% to over 40%. And even though that now we use a wider variety of IT tools such as Zoom or WebEx, NTT found out that only 43% of global workers have received their remote working training on cybersecurity. So that is why remote workers tend to have really low cybersecurity awareness level. Trend Micro found that only 20% of remote workers never use their work laptop for personal ends, such as online shopping, and 38% have uploaded their corporate data to non-work applications. Isn't that scary? So we really need to change our behavior for better cybersecurity. And unfortunately, many people have been furloughed or pushed out of their work due to the pandemic and also economic downturn. Lots of espionage are going on the social media as well. So you really have to watch out. Because I'm sure that you now receive at least a few Zoom or WebEx invitations every single day. But please watch out, because maybe they are fake invitations. And the worst case scenario that actually already has happened is business closed down. So Lepidus Capital, a Sydney-based hedge fund, received a fake Zoom invitation last year. And one of the co-founders clicked on a link very casually. But now the cyber attacker was able to hijack the entire company's IT system. And now the attacker started to send out fake invoices. And on behalf of the co-founder, he started to accept the request to send out a large amount of money to overseas. And that co-founder only found it out a couple of weeks later, but it was too late, because after finding out that the incident, the largest client decided to withdraw the money from the Reputus Capital, and Reputus Capital had to close down their business 2 months later. And we also see more phishing or fake recruiting campaigns on LinkedIn. So that is why in April 2021, the UK government launched a Think Before You Link campaign, because they found out that over 10,000 UK nationals from the government and industries have been approached by fake LinkedIn profiles, linked to hostile states or criminal activities. And if you casually click those invitations to offer you speaking opportunities or business or travel opportunities, that's really tempting. But it also means that you will give away a lot of confidential information and your business connections. And those spies or criminals would find it easier to get connected with your business partners or even your managers or CEOs. And North Korea also used the social media to launch a cyber espionage to try to steal information on COVID-19 vaccinations. According to Reuters article in November 2020, North Korean hackers impersonated recruiters on LinkedIn and WhatsApp to send out a fake job offer to AstraZeneca employees. Unfortunately, the attempt was failed, but still, this kind of activities are going on the social media. NTT Limited found that the 3 most targeted critical infrastructure sectors during the pandemic are manufacturing, healthcare, and education. And you can also see that from this chart that these 3 sectors also have the lowest cybersecurity maturity level. So that's why they've been targeted. And of course, healthcare services are always important, but healthcare is becoming more important than ever during the pandemic to be able to access on a 24/7 basis. However, traditionally, healthcare doesn't spend much money on cybersecurity, so that is why they tend to have insufficient cybersecurity maturity. And a lot of cyber attacks come from phishing or spear phishing emails. Email security is crucial. However, 86% of healthcare institutions do not use any email scanning or filtering tools. It means that the healthcare staff often are left behind and they are vulnerable to cyber attacks. Now we see a lot of cyber espionage attempts to steal vaccine or COVID-19 medicine information, and ransomware attacks often hit the healthcare institutions. And ransomware attacks means that they take business continuity as a hostage, and they also tend to do double or even triple extortions, to not only to encrypt your precious data, but also to steal data before encryption and dump your data online, or even print out thousands and thousands of ransom notes from your printers, or reach out to your customers or business partners using the stolen personal information to pressure them to pay a ransom to protect their privacy. So, and we see that actually saw that a 64% increase of ransomware attacks globally, according to Barracuda. However, our cybersecurity is not that strong to protect ourselves from ransomware attacks, because according to Sophos, based in the UK, found that only 24%, 1 out of 4 ransomware attacks have been stopped before data is encrypted. And there are many devastating ransomware attacks on different healthcare institutions in the different countries. For example, in September 2020, a Düsseldorf University Hospital was hit by a ransomware attack, and a female patient died after she was transferred to another hospital. And the police had to do a negligence homicide probe, although that they later found out that the timing didn't match the ransomware attack launch, and it was not due to the ransomware attack. And recently, the Irish health services were disrupted by a ransomware attack, and they had to stop or postpone some of the medical treatments. And the estimated recovery cost is $600 million US. And we also saw the Colonial Pipeline incident in the United States, and it showcased that the ransomware attack is not just about money, but it is also about national security and economic security. And in Italy, now the COVID-19 vaccine booking website went down due to a ransomware attack. So as you see, now we are facing grave damages caused by cyber espionage attempts and ransomware attacks. But you may say that, oh, why not just pay a ransom so that we can fix a problem very quickly? But I would say no, because Sophos also found that only 8% of victims were able to recover all the data after they even pay a ransom. And if you pay, it means that you double the recovery cost, because you still have to pay a lot of money to recover and minimize the damages to expand. And if you pay, you will be considered an easy target, and you will have more reasons to be targeted again, maybe from the same attacker, as the CyberReason in Israel found it out. So that is why the global leaders in the different countries strongly reacted and enhanced their country's cybersecurity after the big ransomware incident. President Emmanuel Macron has promised to invest 1 billion euros in a national cybersecurity strategy after 2 ransomware attacks on French hospitals. And Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga declared that the ransomware attacks threatens the foundation of our democracy, and they also challenged our basic values at the G7 summit earlier this year. So now, again, because now we spend more time online and we are becoming more reliant on the information technologies during the pandemic, our attack surface has expanded and we are becoming more vulnerable to cyber attacks. But as I said earlier today, even though that we face a lot of challenges caused by the pandemic, Japan was able to still have a successful cybersecurity protection for Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympic Games, thanks to domestic and also international collaborations and public-private partnerships. And I really appreciate it. And I think that cybersecurity is somewhat similar to COVID-19 pandemic, even though the computer virus and COVID-19 virus are invisible, they are still out there and they are trying to infect us. So that is why then we have to raise our awareness. We have to quickly detect and respond those threats. And of course, technologies and experts are important to protect ourselves. But because the damages, potential damages to be would be so devastating, so every single one of us has to be wary and watch out to raise cybersecurity and COVID-19 awareness to protect ourselves and report to minimize potential damages. And I really appreciate the European colleagues, corporations to enhance our cybersecurity. And there are multiple levels of cybersecurity collaboration between Japan and Europe, such as in the EU or NATO or cyber exercises, and also for the free and open in the Pacific. So I really look forward to working with you all on a better cybersecurity and also for the free and open in the Pacific. Thank you very much. And I hope you stay safe and healthy for our own health, but also for the IT health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mihoko, for your presentation today. Before leaving for a short break to give the chance to our physical participants to see the exhibition outside on the ICT Spring, we are going to have a short advertising video.
Putting the customer at the center of everything we do is the new mantra within our organization.
We want to make experiences as frictionless and seamless as possible.
And we still want to make sure that people feel the human aspect of our business.
You don't want a customer to know that you're a series of different departments. They want to know that they're talking to T-Mobile.
Salesforce enables our colleagues to do what they do best, which is build that relationship with our customers.
The beauty of the Salesforce platform is it gives us a 360-degree view of our customer.
When you're on a single system, everybody in the company can have a single view into the customer lifecycle.
You can really create an amazing end-to-end journey.
It's smart integration. Our rate of innovation has increased with the Salesforce platform because we're able to try things new very quickly. And if they don't work, then we go back to the drawing board.
We have the ability to change direction if we need to, because there's data there that is real time.
And then we move to the predictive insights. And that's what we need to run our business.
So right now, we can actually get the true power of being a global company by using Salesforce technology. It's, super exciting.
The fact that we have one system rolled out globally is enabling us to innovate and execute in a way that we never could have done before.
Salesforce ci ha trasmesso una sicurezza che i dati dei nostri stimabili e amabili clienti vengano in qualche maniera rispettati.
Salesforce has been a guiding light, showing us what is possible when you platform everything around the customer.
So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming back and joining to our last session for today. I hope you enjoyed your break. And now we have another session of the CISO talk. So for this one, we have the chance to have two speakers participating. So we are counting on the participation of Eric Singer, CISO at Schneider Electric. He has more than 25 years of experience in cybersecurity. And during his career, he actively participated in the creation and management of the government 24/7 Watch and Alert Center in France and led the coordination of cybersecurity crisis simulations.
And on stage will join us Luca Collet, CISO of INCERT. He worked for more than 12 years in information security management, especially to protect critical national or European large-scale systems, develop information security systems for both private and public sector, and to accompany the digital transformation of the organizations. Please join us.
So I hope Eric can also hear us online remotely. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Welcome.
Super good. Welcome. And again, I would have loved to be personally there with you, and it would have been better, but I'm here remotely and happy to be with you today.
So yeah, thank you for joining us. And we are going to start right away. Our first question will be for the both of you. And as you have lots of experience in cybersecurity, you have both worked for different companies, large companies. What are the major changes you have seen, each of you, since the beginning of your careers?
Eric, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start if you want. I'm remote, but thank you to give me the opportunity to start. Well, first of all, since I think, I don't know, since 20 years, and I think in kind of sad anniversary of those the 9/11, we had a big increase of the terrorism. And the terrorism moved forward, digitization, and we have saw definitely the increasing of the cyber threats since 20 years. And this is exactly what is ongoing. And we had big changes in 2017 and previously. We first of all Stuxnet attack against Iranian nuclear places. It was, I think, a wake-up call for the global community in cybersecurity, but also we had this WannaCry and NotPetya issue. It was like, I think it was, yes, in 2017. And it gave a big new conscience for everyone, and especially at the senior level, that cybersecurity is not, again, it's not anymore about giving rules. It gives rules, but it protects the company, and it enables the company to run the business. And now, in 2020, in 2021, we have so many ransomwares. We have some new trends of spying that definitely we move from an information security manager to chief information security officer, reporting directly at the C-level, at the board of level of the companies, to ensure that cybersecurity first protect the company, second is giving value to the new digitization business, because without digitization, that was definitely accelerated by the COVID, security has to be embedded, and still we have a big path to go, and we are just at the beginning of our journey now.
you want to follow up?
Yeah, I can. I can add some stuff, but that's super interesting, and I would just bounce on that. The thing is that you're right about all the ransomware stuff. I think ransomware was a big hit. And was really a critical one for the C-level. It was really cool to have that as a cybersecurity specialist, because it just opened the eyes. It was cyber attacks were already happening. It was less ransomware attacks than just spying, taking data out, selling data, or this kind of stuff. But now with ransomware, the business stopped for the first time, or almost for the first time. And then that really say, this is something critical, and we need to take this into account. And I want to come back in time also with something that is ISO 27001. So the creation of that just was ahead of time. For once, this is standardization. Standardization is almost always late. But for this one, it was super early for the development. So now, progressively, people didn't know what to do with ISO 27001, all the standards that they need to develop and deploy and all this stuff. But progressively, people get experience on that. Launch is like ITIL, COBIT, or this kind of stuff, the framework. People get used to it. And now they know how to use it better. And they know how to use the risk-centric approach, for example, the threat-centric approach, this kind of stuff. We are now in the world of threat modeling. We need to know what are the threats in order to advance and go further. So that, for me, that's really the major change. We went from a world where cybersecurity or information security was still here to something really centric now that is taken into account for all C-level. And when you say that CISO is reporting to the C-level, now it's more, they are part of the C-level. It's CISO with a C in front of it. And now more and more in a lot of companies, they are part of the board. They can talk head to head to a CEO. And this is really something that changed a lot. And the last thing that changed is that with that much people looking for profiles in cybersecurity, there is a shortage. And this is also a big change.
Okay, so maybe a next question also for the two of you. You both worked for public as well as for the private sector. Can you tell us a bit what you see as the major differences with the cybersecurity approach among the two different sectors? Now, Luca.
I will start then. Okay. my turn. What I see as a difference for both sectors, I would say they are not. It's not different. They need to protect assets. They need to protect data. They need to protect stuff. Private companies try to do the same. And they've got the same objectives, that their reputation will not be touched and that their business is still running. So in my opinion, at least, there is not much differences between both. The difference is not only at the political level, where you have really differences between a European Commission, I would take as an example, but compared to a really small company that can be agile. There are different needs, they got different systems that could be huge, really huge, and agility is something that could miss to huge companies. But that's the same in private sectors. Large banks, large institutions, they got issues as well to move towards new paradigms of security, for example, or this kind of stuff. But for me, they've got the same objectives.
Mm-hmm. I fully concur on this, and I think we can't opposite now public, private, any companies. We are an ecosystem. We are living now in a kind of not peace world, as we said, and as maybe John Lennon said, let's give peace a chance. And we need to work together and when it comes to protection, to trust relation, there is no competition, but definitely cooperation. And definitely that's why we need to work all the CISOs, all the chief information security officer together to ensure that we are cooperating together to tackle those new attacks, to be ahead, to be advanced, because attackers need to know that we are working together. That's definitely quite a big thing for us. And that's why I'm part of the CESIN. And the CESIN is I'm a board member of this organization, is the representative association of digital cybersecurity experts in France. And we are more than 750 members, and from large companies or administration, private and public, banking, insurance, industry, services. We are working together to share our practices, to share the way we are doing cybersecurity, to drive maybe to learn from each other, for new CISOs, to give them the basics, the basis to work on them, to help everyone to connect with C-level of other companies, for sure. And on my aim, and I'm very happy to be here and to share it in Luxembourg today, is we need to extend not only in France, but to extend this at European, international level, to work together again, and to liaise our CISO community in France with other communities in Europe or more broadly.
Maybe if I can add something?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. The thing is that, as you say, everybody got the same concerns now. And even for the public administrations, the public institutions, they are going into the cloud. They are doing projects in Internet of Things. They are doing a lot of experiments around all the new techs like intelligence, artificial intelligence. They are basically doing the same things as in private sector. So at the end, I'm part of a public company. I know that. So that's why I can speak as well. But even in the bigger organization, I quoted European Commission. They are doing exactly the same. Investigating the cloud, public, private, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and all this stuff. They are all developing this kind of stuff. They are a company like others now.
So you talked about collaboration, you talked about the European Commission. What is your view on collaboration? Are you satisfied with the current collaboration going on among European companies, among private and public entities? Are you satisfied, or do you think there's room for improvement? Eric?
Yeah, I can begin. So thank you to give me again the opportunity. There are always rooms of improvement. Currently, we don't have a kind of global European organization to share with all CISO, cybersecurity communities. I know kind of plenty of CISOs in Europe, but we don't have not yet a place to share together. And again, we are at the beginning of this journey. We need to work on specific subjects and to cooperate on those ones, like, for instance, on the NIS V2. That will be, I think, a huge change in the following years, as huge as the GDPR. This NIS V2 has to be adopted, I think, at a European level, but kind of on a coherent way globally, in order not to have a local implementation, but kind of standard, coherent, standardized kind of implementation of the NIS V2. It will be also so this directive led by the European Commission will aim to drive cybersecurity globally in Europe, and also to ensure that when there is a cyber incident, to connect to national cybersecurity authority, to European national authorities like the EMEA, like the NC, like the BSI, to retrieve information, to alert those authorities in case of incident. And here we'll be able to have a nice way, at least to answer those attacks. But we are again at the beginning of it, so there are kind of rooms of improvement to build this. But I think we are in a good path, and but we are at the beginning of it. And again, I think the NIS V2 and the connections with the European Commission and with national authorities will help us on this.
Well, I can add a few words for 30 seconds. So the thing is that we got the tools. We got MISP, for example, developed in Luxembourg. We got CERTs or CERTs that are all around the world, all around Europe. Now the only thing is to trust others and sharing the incidents, the indicators of compromise, all this stuff, in order for them to be shared, really, and in a timely manner. This is something that is still not done, and I don't see how we can overcome the doubts around all this, but I really praise for having something a bit more timely.
Thank you. Eric, you brought before the topic of ransomware, and Luca commented how it was a turning point. So for you, working in a multinational such as Schneider Electric and being a specialist in digital solutions, do you think this is making you more vulnerable to attacks? It's making you more the target for hackers?
Everybody is a target for hackers. Good questions. And let's recap what happened at the beginning of 2021 or end of 2020 with the SolarWinds attack. The SolarWinds attack was, first of all, targeted some this company. Do you think it was the final target, or maybe other companies were targeted here? So again, everybody is targeted. And I think all organizations have to settle the adequate cybersecurity organization in order to answer incident the adequate way, again, based on a risk assessment. So first of all, we need to understand the global attack surface. From this, we are doing that's what we are doing. Yeah? From this attack surface, and the attack surface for Schneider, for instance, is huge. We are having a risk register, and from this register, we are having key cybersecurity posture and investment on specific organization to handle the risk and to handle the incidents. And for this also, we are doing cyber crisis simulation in order to be ready in case of a big crisis. All organizations will face a big crisis, and we need to get ready on this one. It's not only about technical aspects, it's more about organization, process, business continuity processes with key operation process of the company, like supply chain, like, for instance, the breakdown of the Active Directory, which is the repository of identity and authentication of people. So all of this has to be done, but also, and that's part of our daily job as a CISO, is to learn from the incidents of others, but also of ourselves, to learn from this incident and to think out of the box and to think, yes, in this case of this little incident, what would have happened in the worst case? Let's also think about with others, and let's learn from others. Could as this supply chain attack happen to us? In this case, what kind of measures, posture should have been done at in the company, working, for instance, in the organization aspects to give some security culture to the company, and that's what we are doing when doing phishing exercise, regarding all the processes, all the policies of the company, ensuring that people know what to do in case of delivery of a project, for instance, but also it's about technology, but not only, as I said, technology to have the adequate technology. As Lucas said, it's about artificial intelligence with our antivirus. We are not speaking anymore about antivirus, but EDR, meaning that we've got more comportment-based antivirus linked with also with the network. So we need also always to be on our guard, to challenge our practices, and again to cooperate with others.
Thank you. As time is running, I would suggest we go to just one last question, and maybe if you can answer it in a short, with a couple of words. So INCERT has as its priorities to secure the e-travel documents for the Luxembourg government, basically. And it's very sensitive data, especially as they are public documents. Can you explain shortly what are the specificities for you in terms of security?
Yeah, okay. One of the goals of INCERT is to manage the PKI, so public key infrastructure, about all the chips that got in the passport, in the electronic ID cards, and or the ID cards of Luxembourg, the one with the chip, and the how would you call that? I don't remember. Certificate de résidence. Yeah, this one. Thank you. So the goal is really, this is really sensitive, because if someone get the hands on the system, that could really cause a wreck. So we need to think about the threats that are behind. One of the things that we are a bit less prone to have as an issue is a ransomware, because ransomware will just block us. But we got DRPs, we got BCP, and we can still running our systems without being that impacted. But the most important thing is to lose confidentiality inside and integrity inside. So whenever you got integrity issues in that or confidentiality issues, then you are screwed up, because people could create fake passports, but with a real passport, and then pretend to be really a citizen of Luxembourg. So that is really critical. So the goal is really for us to understand what are the threats. For example, INCERT then needs to understand that this, or we at INCERT, we understand that these risks, these threats, is really to steal the system and to produce new passports. So we need to also push all the strategy on this point. So that is something really specific.
Thank you very much. So we are going to continue with this CISO talk by welcoming a new entrepreneur to pitch a company with us. So he's going to join us on a stage. Davy Cox, CEO of Brainframe. Brainframe?
You can open.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope there is still some energy in the room because we're in the afternoon already. It's lots of talks, lots of interesting talks. I want to start with thanking the organization for giving me the opportunity to talk in this situation, because that's really interesting to see what is going on. And I would like to give a perspective from my side, which is more coming from the startup and the PME environment. So basically, currently I am acting as a CISO as a service for several startups, and I have been growing up my studies around the CISO in a career path which started with really in IT. Going towards working more and closer with management. Then I did the master in security here in Luxembourg, one of the first delegations, which was an extremely good experience. And then slowly, suddenly got the opportunity to take the role as a CISO in a company that is known here in Luxembourg, Doctena. And coming from IT and growing up, and this is really, I think, an important aspect for what we need to take care of in the industry today, is really empower the startups and people that are growing up. It is not easy to get the lift off and to start as a CISO. So suddenly you find yourself that you need to be thinking about the business risks. You need to be thinking about different departments. What are their assets? You need to start talking with all these departments. You need to understand how all the flows of information work. And this is really challenging. But luckily enough, I passed that part quite well in the beginning because I knew the systems quite well. But the biggest challenge moving to a CISO role, I think, is, and it's been mentioned before, is already the tons of different tools that are coming, and they are thrown at you all the time. And what I didn't understand is, and a big problem that I had is the fact that I didn't have a tool to actually organize my work. So that means as a CISO, you have a lot of different tools you need to manage. That's taking different tasks. You have different risk management. You have the asset management. You have communication, especially in smaller companies. All the information that you're actually gathering, as often one individual that has a lot of other tasks still to do. You need a system where you can put all this information in. And with the rise of actually the lack of competency in security specialists and everything moving more to a consultant basis, where we're actually, especially for smaller and companies, is a big opportunity, because like we heard today that banks are unable to recruit specialists. Then don't even think about it that a startup can do that. But it's crucial, because startups, that's the economy of tomorrow, right? We need to think about that, and we need to really empower them. And so that's where I really, during my job, I started thinking, like, how is it possible we don't have a good tool to do our jobs as a CISO as a service, or as a consultant in compliance to manage multiple things. So actually, as a CISO, I actually built a tool for the CISOs with a dedicated team. And I would like to present that to you with a short video.
Security or compliance professional, you bring your expert knowledge and unique way of working to protect your customers. What makes you succeed is your ability to ask the right questions, understand system workflows, implement effective policies and procedures, focus on priority risks, and your eye for detail on the things that matter for your customer. As a security or compliance specialist, you need to understand how complex technologies work under the hood, how they interact with other systems, where risks really have an impact, and how they can be remediated without impacting the business. When, on top of that, you need to implement and maintain security, quality, and/or privacy compliance documentation with auditable proof. You can imagine that managing this effectively without a dedicated tool is nearly impossible. Luckily for you, that is exactly why we made Brainframe. Brainframe is the first of its kind visual security and compliance information management system for consultants and professionals that allows you to efficiently implement your own content and way of working in a highly structured and visual way that makes sense for your customers. With Brainframe, you give your customer access to their dedicated workspace, where you can manage their security and compliance with easy task delegation and progress tracking using customizable Kanban boards and Gantt timelines to ensure an efficient execution. Brainframe gives you all you need with integrated features like industry-specific document types, risk management, KPI tracking, website snapshots, asset relation views, document versioning with approval workflows, and document templates, diagram editor, and many more. This all for an affordable price that'll save you a lot of your precious time. Let Brainframe give you the wings you deserve. Try it out now for free on brainframe.com during 3 months without any commitment.
All right, I think maybe it sounds a bit very commercial. At the stage where we are in today, it is really to involve multiple CISOs. Because I have my way of working, I have included with several other CISOs the key tasks that we often need to do, and those that need to do the job every day. And I talked with many different people today. They confirm all this specific needs, which is very good to hear. And I think it's important, those people that feel attracted to this idea and to this product, please go to the website and take an appointment with me. You can book an appointment online and talk with me, because we are developing the product targeted at CISOs for starting companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. So I don't know if our previous CISO, like Luca or Eric, if he's still connected, would like to ask any specific question to Davy.
Yeah, I got questions about this kind of thing. One of the main points that is quite crazy, not only as a CISO, but anybody that works in cybersecurity, as you said, is the tremendous amount of tools that you are using, tremendous number of systems that you are managing, and then we need overviews on all these systems. And I was wondering if we can, you mentioned, for example, risks. I got one super picky thing when I use risk is really to have to understand the risk just for a specific system, for example. So I got 10, for example, and I just want to focus on one system and develop risk management, or just having dashboard specifically for this one. And the tools for nowadays will not provide that.
I love the question, because it's really, thank you very much, because this is at the core. You heard in the video that it's a visual ISMS, and visual is really reflecting to what we all know, like the directory structure that like we have in our local Explorer. That's the basis of how Brainframe has been constructed. So you know, you have a root folder, and then you have several subfolders. So if you take that same ID and you have subfolders per department or per product, we have added a lot of things. I will not go into detail here. But the task management and the risk management and the assets, they will be living inside of these subfolders. And this means that if you go into a specific folder and you say Project X that our company is working on, then you can see all the data that is actually in that folder and structured in all these subfolders, which is a huge win. And I personally don't know any system that is allowing that. Imagine the same thing. So now you're looking at it from a project perspective, but in Brainframe, actually a file or a directory, because it's the same concept as your local file system, can live in multiple places. So we introduced a complete new way of thinking of documents. So instead of having an Excel document, a Word document, or a PowerPoint, we actually give you the creativity of having your vocabulary. So we don't want to make a custom-made product for one person or company. We know that some companies, they have a certain quality quality or let's say security rather terms that they're using internally that everybody already understands. So they can create their own document types, which are then used inside of this this knowledge tree, and they can actually be represented as different assets, and afterwards also being linked to each other. So imagine if you have assets and you link one document is of asset type and another document is of a stakeholder type. Each document has other content, but then from one inside of a specific department, you can get a view, for example, on all the stakeholders linked to your assets. So this creates you a mind map automatically based on which folder you're in. You get also, like we showed, the Kanban solution, all linked to the items. And I invite you to try it out. So it's a public trial, and I would love to talk with those that are interested.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I ask some questions?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you. So I didn't see the video because unfortunately I'm online and I was not able to see the video. But I feel I have the flavor of this product that seems to be promising. So 3 questions. First of all, will it help to do ISO 27001 certification as it is an ISMS? Is it a standard way to do it? Second question will be, is it possible to, is it your view to compare ISO or ISMS implementation for the ecosystem, to use your tool to check, okay, this company using this tool has this level of cybersecurity compliance, and maybe you can have different level of security, and we can have kind of a threshold for companies to ensure that they are cyber secure. And third question is, do you ensure that definitely you are cyber secure, that you are ransomware bulletproof?
I have to jump in. I'm sorry, the time is up. I would suggest for you to connect offline, or not maybe offline, but at least aside, and to clarify these questions if that's okay for you, because the time is over. Thank you very much for all those interesting contributions.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So for the next session, which is addressing the cybersecurity sovereignty in Europe, I am pleased to welcome 3 people, 3 great professionals on stage. So we have Mr. Sokratis Katsikas, who is director of the Norwegian Center for Cybersecurity in Critical Sectors. We have remotely connected Edvardas Sileris, who is head of the European Cybercrime Center at Europol. And we have Pascal Steichen, CEO of SECURITYMADEIN.LU. So thank you for joining. Just checking if Edvardas is here and can hear us.
Yes, good afternoon. I can hear you. I cannot see you, but I can hear you at least.
Well, at least you can hear us. That's already a good start. Thank you for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
So thank you. The topic, as Sheila mentioned, is cybersecurity sovereignty for Europe. So the first question we have, it's like, could you please explain to us a little bit what we are talking about? What is this European sovereignty, like in general, but also like specific to cybersecurity?
Yeah, okay. Well, academic tradition, usually we like to define things that we're going to talk about. So I guess it's a good idea for me to start. So, of course, the concept of sovereignty in general, I wouldn't try to explain. I think this is something that we all feel what it is. But focusing on into what in the European Union at least is called digital sovereignty, or sometimes technological sovereignty. Well, I think it was mentioned also in one of the talks this morning that there are lots of definitions of what this is all about. So what I would actually go for this discussion that we will be having is a definition that was given by the European Parliament, which is quite generic. That digital sovereignty is the ability of the European Union to act independently in the digital world. Okay? And of course, we can discuss a lot about what independently means and what digital world means and so on and so forth. But again, I think that this definition suffices for the discussion. Now, if you want to focus on cybersecurity within digital sovereignty, because digital sovereignty obviously is not only about cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is about protecting cyberspace. And therefore, digital sovereignty in cybersecurity means the ability to act independently when protecting our cyberspace.
Yes, exactly. Allow me to jump in there. What you mentioned, cybersecurity being protecting cyberspace, which is crucial in this digital sovereignty, and I think that comes in the discussion elements, because what means protecting? How do you protect? Because protecting can mean full control of taking full control over something, or protecting can mean giving the capacity and tools and competences to each individual to protect himself. And I would say there we have a huge spectrum, and this is where definitely I would say this topic is really covering, I would say, from the very technical up to the political discussions, and so I would say we could talk 2 days about it.
Thank you. So now that we've defined a little bit what this is and like what we are talking about, what can you tell us about the current status? Like, where are we at?
Allow me to continue in the when you look at the spectrum. At the moment, there are a lot of discussions going on at the, I would say, very high level, political level. There is this definition going around called cyber diplomacy, to find a way between states, between countries, between nations, between continents, to a set of rules, a set of norms at the UN level, for instance, and other levels, to make sure that this cyberspace can be used by everyone in a safe and secure way. And I would say there we are in the very beginning of the discussions. There have been some very interesting recommendations already been published by a dedicated group of experts, but still there is a long way to go, especially as this is a real international discussion. When we come back to look at Europe, I think that it's a bit more concrete in the sense that the European Union has specific values, has specific, I would say, own frameworks, and all the countries, I would say, are more aligned with these, and there are several strategies on the European framework that clearly give a direction into where we want to go. And politically, on the European side, there I would say the challenges are more on the technological side of things, because as we all know, and this is not a secret, Europe is quite dependent technologically on solutions coming from other places in the world. And there is quite a huge dynamic going on at the moment in Europe to make sure that there are more technologies, tools, things developed out of Europe to, I would say, complete or to make sure that this sovereignty can be reached.
I would like to jump in and ask Edward if he agrees with what was said until now, because that was the view basically for cybersecurity, and I would like to know whether you share the same view for cyber criminal perspective.
Thank you very much. In general, yes, I agree. It's cyberspace, but no one knows what it is in reality, and it doesn't have clear borders. So we have infrastructure owned by, for example, European companies, but it could be located in different areas, not in European continent. So for that reason, we need to understand that it's European sovereignty, but in fact, it means that sovereignty of some companies and legislation. So we as Europe, we have legislation and we have some ambitions to have even more and go further. But as previous speaker said that, in fact, till now, we are really we are really dependent on companies who are outside of EU. So the strategic direction goes towards independency and to create our own products. I think the ambition is good, but implementations, we need to go even much faster than we are going right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Fully support what has been said. Just to add possibly a couple of thoughts. First of all, at the political level, I think that the establishment of, or rather the ensuring of digital sovereignty is one of the top items in the agenda of the European Commission since its very first days of getting into office. But of course, it's easier said than done, among other reasons, because of our technological dependence, which has already been highlighted, on services that non-European companies offer. Now, the interesting thing is there are concerns in Europe, of course, about this lack of full digital sovereignty of the Union, but we do also have measures in place that can somehow ease these concerns. And this is legislation on one hand, but we also have instruments like, for example, fostering investment or fostering collaboration and instruments like this, including also research. But I think, well, in fact, I would just add one question to the discussion. I think it's not clear, even within the European Commission and even less among European member states, what kind of line of political action we should be taking with regards to achieving our digital sovereignty. And to put it in simplistic terms, would we want to follow a protectionist approach? Or would we want to follow an approach that would acknowledge the fact that this is how digital world economy is and how Europe can become digitally sovereign within that reality of today?
I think today there is no bulletproof answer to this question yet, but I heard a very interesting direction related to this question, which is a proposal which will be put forward, or which has been put forward, but which will be, I would say, coming with the French presidency of the European Union next year. Well, I heard this last week when I was in France at the huge conference, and there they mentioned that one of their priorities that they put into their presidency is about this digital sovereignty, and they clearly want to go not a protectionist way, which said by France is very interesting, but want clearly to go more an open way, and especially focus on developing programs to safeguard the digital commons, how they call them. So the different tools, platforms, frameworks that make the internet this international neutral platform to try to really protect these, so that each individual, each user of the cyberspace can be sure that he has his own, I would say, his own sovereignty in such a way. So to make sure, for instance, that open source solutions, open source tools are being pushed, are being supported, so that that there is always an alternative to, I would say, more centralized solutions that are there and that are available. So I think that is one interesting direction, which I personally definitely support also, and which I'm looking forward to see the developments.
But this morning, Despina also talked about, well, she didn't say sovereignty, but she explained that for a long time, member states were kind of keeping away from a European security approach because of the sovereign issues. So how is that? Do we, as a member state, and I'm not talking specifically for Luxembourg, because Luxembourg is a small country, so it's in different an approach. But like France, Germany, do these member states have to give up in a sort of some part of the sovereignty, their national sovereignty, to get a European sovereignty in cybersec?
That's a tough question. When you started your question, I was thinking about Europol, because Europol is one example of how Europe works together. True. And how, I would say, all the different nations not gave up something, but created something together. And I know maybe you have some experience in that area.
Actually, good point. Yesterday, I took part in Brussels in an interesting discussion about joint cyber unit and possible role and competences of this unit. So it will be even more integrated, I think, within European Union. And one of the findings are that we as law enforcement community, we have more or less same standards, common approach, because crime is everywhere. And when it comes to cybersecurity, more or less all the countries has unique mechanisms how to coordinate, and different entities are responsible for same things. So it's much more complicated compared to law enforcement part, because it's, as I said, more or less in Luxembourg, in Lithuania, in Germany, in Norway, drug trafficking is drug trafficking, cybercrime is cybercrime, ransomware is ransomware. But when it comes to critical infrastructure and CSERs and all these cybersecurity things, they are much more complicated. So, but the main thing is will. If you have enough resources and human factors, I would say it's possible. But the trickiest question is how Europe will do it. And of course, then we will face all the European treaties and interest of all member states, and it will be a long way forward, I would say.
I think that what you're saying, that a cybercrime is a cybercrime, is very interesting, because that actually shows the importance of Europol and the collaboration among member states, because it is actually a real issue when you have an incident nationally, but the attacker is not sitting nationally. You cannot locate it. So that's where collaboration is key, of course. And I think where we collaborate already for Europol, and I think we should way more collaborate when it comes to all kinds of cybersecurity issues. But why is it so important to call it sovereignty, or to be independent for the protection? Why do you think in your own domains why it is important?
Actually, you are right. Europol, and especially European Cybercrime Center, is a success story in this area, because we started in 2013, and right now we don't have any issues in cooperation within European Union. And even more, we have joint cybercrime task force here at Europol, and we have representatives not only from EU countries, but from third countries as well. And for example, US, Canada, Australia, and they share information with us. So fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which is the right answer, but 80% of everything is more or less related to outside of EU. So for that reason, it's crucial for law enforcement to have this access. And if we speak about sovereignty, it would be much more simple situation from law enforcement point of view if we need to deal only within borders of European Union, but unfortunately it's not the case. Second thing, that internet is owned mainly by private entities. So right now it's Europol's regulation under discussion in Euro Parliament, and we hope we will get these additional powers towards private sector. It means that we will be in better position to cooperate, to exchange personal data with private sector directly, because in many cases it's not enough only willingness from law enforcement point of view, but also we need to cooperate with private entities as well, and to share information which is needed for law enforcement community.
I just may add on why is digital sovereignty important? Well, or maybe cybersecurity, or sovereignty in cybersecurity. Well, if you think about cyberspace as an additional space in addition to land, sea, or air, right, that any nation has to protect. And I don't think that anyone would question why we would need to be sovereign in our land, in our air, in our sea, right? Then the same answer applies to cyberspace. But there are additional reasons for that. And I could offer that sovereignty in cyberspace also relates to the economic ability of the country or of the federation of countries or of the union of countries. And it also relates to the protection of fundamental values and fundamental rights of the citizens of the country as well. And, well, again, we can discuss all these, but I think that this is quite well understood by everyone, at least in the European Union, that we share the same values, and we do have fundamental human rights that we need to protect, and these extend to cyberspace. So these are reasons why we need to ensure our sovereignty of our cyberspace.
Yes, exactly, and taking you mentioned the economical aspect a little bit. I'd like to go a bit more deeper into this also, because on a pure economic perspective, market perspective, there is also a stake in this, and linked to the fact that in Europe we have these common values, we have this common way of addressing things. We have, I would say, one keyword, GDPR. We have this common tool, which is what some would call it great, others would call it more a pain thing, but it's there and it's the same for everybody. That's already a very good thing. And from a pure economic perspective, there are some examples of companies that have been that has been developed has been developed in Europe. So people have been universities have worked in Europe, have developed that technology, have created a startup, created company, etc. Grew up, and then at a certain point of time, I would say on an investment side, I would say there was an investor from outside of Europe who invested, and they got, I would say, they went out of Europe, grew bigger again, and came back with their services to Europe. But, and that's the thing where we have the issue, we're bound to other legal restrictions and other values that we have in Europe. So it was kind of an economic brain drain that happened. There are a few examples of these, and so also on an economic perspective, there is a need to go into this direction. The word sovereignty is not the right word for this thing, but it's part of the overall idea of doing things, and that's why I think it's important to support such ideas, such initiatives, and bring in this economic aspect into the equation, basically.
You mentioned before how Europe depends on other countries for technology, and this also like makes me think a bit of like the whole tendency now with cloud. Like there's all these like companies going in the cloud, all these like cloud solutions, and I think a lot of those also come from outside Europe. So is this like now an added layer to like finding this sovereignty is something that it's already part of, like we are already taking into account? Like how does this cloud and all these cloud providers from outside, how is it impacting? Like what's its place in this discussion?
That's clearly a big part of the discussion, or a big element in it, and there are already clear initiatives addressing specific the digital sovereignty in the era of cloud. There is this Gaia X project. There are other initiatives where the European Commission, but also, or the European Union, but also the member states individually really invest or have investment plans into developing technology standards and all things around cloud to have an alternative to what is existing today, and or to develop technologies that enable the security, privacy, and all the values into another infrastructure which is not underlying the same value. So I think there are a lot of initiatives going on, and cloud is clearly a topic in this area, and I think it's the area that where we'll see the first results, the first concrete things related to this, I would say, fuzzy subject, which is digital sovereignty.
Just out of interest also, how far do we need to go? Like, do we need to develop our own operating systems and develop our own PCs? CPUs are built in China most.
Yes, Europe, are on this way. This morning you heard Despina talking about this new chip directive. This clearly goes into that direction, so that HPC, for instance, high performance computing, another area, another huge European common project, there clearly has been, or at the moment there are specific chips, specific software that is being developed in Europe and for European projects in that area. So to have an alternative to what is done in other continents.
I am not at all into cyber crime. I worked in cyber defense before and now in cybersecurity. So please excuse my lack of knowledge here. But I saw the French initiative very fast only. And I saw that there is one point in order to promote like capacity building for cybercrime. What can I understand under capacity building for cybercrime or for fighting against cybercriminalists?
Actually, cybercrime or capacities of law enforcement is second part of the same coin. Is cybersecurity. So we as law enforcement, we must understand trends, technologies, and how to retrieve data and evidences, because it became evidences presented in front of the court. So it's necessary to have it. Otherwise, we are consumers, but not developers. So it's not so easy, to be honest, because at European Union, we have approximately 2 million law enforcement officers. But if it comes to cyber capabilities, and especially in the cybercrime area, we really lack of them. And going back to your first question about sovereignty, I believe that COVID has clearly showed need of something what we need to have inside the EU, because with all supply chains right now in different areas, we see a lack of many things what we used to have. And unfortunately, it's good to ring bell just to take some decisions which are necessary to take.
I think also with this idea of like building something and like having this sovereignty, there's something that links to what we were discussing this morning about the lack of talent and the shortage in the industry. So we are trying to create this like sovereignty. Do you think like by creating this, I saw also in this French proposal, and so there's something specific for that, like for people, for the human resources side, and it's to bring together the supply and the demand in this like cybersecurity. And so so we discussed this morning about the younglings and like, you know, like how to promote this thing, how to bring new generations to digital technology, but also like this is something very close to my heart when I think about it. Like I'm in the middle of a transition. I'm a newcomer in this like cybersecurity world, and I found some issues when trying to like, you know, find something for me that I'm not like a young person anymore who is at university or so. Like I'm just trying to like break in the water. Do you think this sovereignty, like there's something that could really also bring together this idea of like getting more people to like join cybersecurity, being that like people coming from other businesses, from other areas, not only about the young generations, but also like, yeah, we need to build capacity. We need to use the resources that we already have. Like, is this also like something that can be achieved through this like European sovereignty?
Yes, one of the pillars of cybersecurity, not only in the context of sovereignty, is the workforce, the cybersecurity workforce. And we all know that there is a global skills gap. I wouldn't give you an estimate, even though there exist many, but they are in the order of hundreds of thousands of security professionals. And it's not only industry that has a difficulty in attracting talent, we also have difficulty in attracting talent in universities as well. So the question of how we address this skills gap goes obviously through the educational offering, but this we have been doing. But this is forward-looking. So a cybersecurity student of today will become a cybersecurity professional after 3 to 5 years, right? And this will not be enough to cover the skills gap. So we do need, that's one reason why we need to retrain professionals of other disciplines into cybersecurity. The other reason is that with the digital transformation, be that in industry or in any other just IT sector or government sector, this means that there is a need for new professional profiles among those cybersecurity profiles, which means, again, that we will need to retrain other disciplines in cybersecurity. And last, but also equally important, I think, and think that we are not paying as much attention as we should in Europe, is inserting cybersecurity education in the K-12 education, from primary school to high school and also to vocational education. So yes, the workforce is one of the pillars. Maybe it's more important than the technological pillar because the technology we have. So more attention should be paid there, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I also think that it's I think, and I hope it will work, that yes, the fact that there is this movement into this, or this need for looking for digital sovereignty, and all the initiatives, all the investments coming along, which will bring new or which will create basically new jobs, which will create new initiatives where workforce is needed, will definitely I would say, create a platform, create an ecosystem where there is room for new people. Today we are more we have more the reverse problem, that there are not enough people. So indeed the fact to create also programs where people can change a career during their life and going into cybersecurity maybe later. That's clearly things that need to happen. But basically, yes, the thing is really that Europe is trying to really create a European ecosystem about cybersecurity, and with all the different things, so the political elements, the laws, but also the investments, the trainings coming along, the I would say education degrees, to really make sure that to really make it an ecosystem, because only this will make sure that we will really get into something that is getting dynamic. And when we look at how it happened that there is Silicon Valley in San Francisco, or close to San Francisco, well, this was due to John F. Kennedy's idea to go to the moon, and huge investments putting in there, huge problems to be solved. And so a lot of people have been attracted to this, and this evolved years after years into what we have now there. So also in Europe, it will not happen in 2 or 3 years. It will probably take many, many years more than this. But if the strategies that are there, I'm confident that we will achieve it.
Edwardos, do you want to add something?
I completely agree that the human factor is a crucial one. We can buy technologies, we can buy equipment, but without humans, without real innovators, we will not achieve a lot. A good thing maybe that we don't need to start from scratch technological world, so it means that you can start from some stages, and we have many talents, but we need to combine them somehow. And I believe that this approach is the best one.
I feel like we could continue discussing this for hours. Unfortunately, our time is up. A great thank you to the 3 of you. It was a pleasure discussing you with this about this important topic. And I think we're going to see more about this topic in the coming months, especially with the French presidency. So thank you very much. And this brings us then to the last session of this. So this brings us to the last session of this European Security Forum, the post-quantum cryptography, and this program will therefore end with André Meyer, Security Practice Lead Luxembourg at Accenture. He will tell us more about quantum supremacy, understanding the future of cryptography. André, please join us on stage again.
Hi everyone, once again, back, changed my shirt. Welcome. So last session, and you probably heard it before this morning, I'm a big proponent of the human factor in the whole cybersecurity world. But today we will tackle a bit of a more complex technological topic. So quantum supremacy. I mean, quantum computing, everyone has heard it. Most people have a vague idea of what it is, and it has so many promises, and it causes so much worry. Today I would like to establish a bit on, catch you very high level, what is quantum computing? How does it impact security? And how do we actually should prepare or start to prepare now? Because by the time it hits, it's too late. It's not a change that you can catch up after it hit. You have to prepare before it becomes reality. So first, let's look a bit at very high level. I want to establish just in brief lines, what is quantum computing? Because I will not get into quantum entanglement and quantum physics. Goes a bit beyond the scope of 15 minutes. So traditional computers have transistors that are 1 or 0, right? They're on or off. Quantum states are a bit more complex. They can be both, they can be anything in between. And this means that by the time if you go from 2 to 4 gigahertz with your PC now, you doubled your performance. Here we speak about exponential increase in power. So if you go from 1 qubit to 2 qubits, you didn't double your performance, you quadrupled it. So the point with, and here we measure in qubits, by the way. So this is what your performance indicator in quantum computing. And that's what makes it so interesting and so scary, because you're exponentially increase in power. And we will see why this will have an impact rather sooner than later. The downfall, however, is if you have 1 or 0, it's rather easy to determine if it is right or wrong. Either you're on or you're off. If you can be both or anything in between. Well, now it's very chaotic. So you have quantum, you have, let's say, approaches on how you can tackle this, but there's a lot of overhead. So you need even more computing power to make sure that your outcome is the outcome you expect. So promising, but for now, this is the future. We will now see where it's coming from. So timeline, I mean, it's not new. The quantum physics, already in the 80s, people were talking about it. They were theorizing how this can revolutionize, which back then, I mean, computing was still new. And they were already dreaming up the next idea, the next evolution, the next step of this. And then in '94, Mr. Shaw came up, and based on the theory of how quantum computing works, he already developed an algorithm that by then could actually destroy the cryptography that people were still theoretically dreaming of. So in theory, we already broke something that in practicality didn't exist yet. So it's really accelerating, and we see this with technology, right? I mean, you look back 10 years ago, you had a huge PC for a certain performance. Now your phone is more powerful than the most powerful workstation you had. Everything is accelerating. Quantum computing is the same. So if we look at 2019 or even now 2021, when the Chinese had the new... so here you can see the numbers, the qubits. These are logical qubits. So you have to imagine you have physical... It's like the old PCs that you see from the movies, like rooms full of computers. Currently, quantum computers are the same. They are enormous, and you have physical installations. But you have to bundle them, and then you have these logical qubits. That's where the power comes from. So right now, we are looking at 64 qubits. There has been someone that claimed to have 70 now. So you can see it's accelerating fast. I mean, we started in '98 with 2. Now we're at 64 or maybe 7. And in 2029, Google announced they want to build a usable, industrialized quantum computer with 1,000 qubits. That's 9 years from now, or 8.5. So it's very, very fast becoming a reality, this. So where are we now? How does this impact cryptography nowadays? Everything you do mostly involves async cryptography, so public keys. You go to a website, HTTPS, or anything you use, you have keys that are shared before, you establish a trusted connection, and then you transfer your encrypted data. All of this, by the time they build a quantum computer with 1,000 qubits, everything that's 500 bits or less, for RSA, Diffie-Hellman, standard things, useless, gone, in seconds, decrypted. So one of the rule of thumb that Microsoft and a couple of others agree on is you need double the amount of qubits to break something in terms of bits. So if you have, let's say, a 1K or 1,024 bits RSA key, it takes you 2,000 qubits to break it. So if we build a 1,000 qubits computer by 2029, and that's what Google announced, right? So now you have other threats, let's say state-sponsored ones, which are not as public in their communication. They might have this way earlier already. You don't have to announce anything. So that's where we are now. But are we now in danger? What's the immediate danger? Well, you know, it's fine. There's no panic right now. We can all be safe. Your data is safe. No one can decrypt this. But it will come fast. And we know that people don't like change. Change is hard. Change is uncomfortable. We don't like to be uncomfortable. We have established things. It has taken us years to get comfortable with what we do now. So people should keep in mind public keys and async cryptography is great, but it is a thing that needs to evolve. So on the other side, we also know that, yeah, some people announce we have 70 qubits, some others don't announce it. We don't know where we are. And that's the big unknown. So if we look at a bit the threats now, it's mostly your APTs. Right? We know the APT29 and others that have made mainstream media, bad actors, they breach, they recover your data, which sometimes is useless, sometimes it's useful, but if it is encrypted right now, they can't do anything with it. However, if that data is relevant 10 years down the line, your medical data, your identifiable data, bank data, once they have data now, they can't use it. by the time cryptography or quantum computers come to a stage where they become usable, all the data that they collected over the last decade can be decrypted within seconds. So now your data is out there. So we need to prepare for this up front. We can't wait for the moment it happens, because the biggest threat is the unknown. We know people are working on this. Everyone is working on this. The person that will build a logical quantum computer with a certain power, well, now he has access to the world's data. And that's scary for a lot of people. So if we think then, okay, what can be done to circumvent this? A lot of smart people are already thinking about how we have ciphers that are quantum proof. After all, it's math. It comes down to the same thing. You have to come up with new cryptography algorithms that cannot be broken by how quantum computers work. Quantum entanglement and quantum computers by itself, they have a certain nature and they're good at certain things and less good at other things. So this we can, of course, use to rethink how we encrypt data. And that's what people are working on right now. But that's the future. Those algorithms, they are not available. You can't change to them now. You can't adapt to a problem that doesn't exist yet. And RSA took us 25 years to make it work. And throughout those 25 years, we discovered shortcomings, which we then fixed down the line. Here we have 9, 10, maybe 15 years to rethink what we do. And again, up to now, we build up. Here, it will hit like a truck, and when it's there, the data is out. Whoever has it, he has your data. He can do whatever he wants with it. So we have to prepare up to that point. Is it critical right now? No. It's still future. But how many companies right now have a real understanding or a real register of what cryptography they use? Where do they use it? What kind of certificates? Where does the data? How often do they change it? We don't have this ledger. Most people have not reached that kind of cryptography maturity yet. And that is feeding into this problem, because if you don't know how you secure your data, well, by the time this hits, you better have a clear understanding, because now you need to change over a very short period of time. So how do we prepare for this? First, as I mentioned, you should build a clear understanding of where you are now, because only if you know where you are now, you can do this change. You can do this preparation. And as we know, change is hard. I mean, let's take an example, IPv4. It's amazing, right? We know for almost 20 years now that we run out. And we have IPv6 for almost as long. Is everything changed to IPv6? Not even close. Although we know we have a problem and we have a solution. Change is hard. And people change when they have to, not when they think they should. That's the thing here. We should prepare for this, because you will have first you will build a ledger. It will take you a year depending on your company's size. Once you know about that, you have to make an inventory and define a plan when you want to switch over, because this is not only a software issue. You can change your web server cipher. All your credit cards, well, you have hardware modules in there, all your TPMs, all your hardware encryption keys on your phones. Well, all of that uses ciphers which are not future-proof. Changing that takes time. Legacy hardware needs to be changed. Software configurations need to be adapted. We need to readapt how we tackle this problem, how we catalog it. There's a lot of things that we can do leading up to the point, while other people that might be working on this right now to make it quantum safe, other people are working on new algorithms to break it. SURE is an example. There are as many people already now trying to take the blueprints of these new ciphers and come up with potential attacks against these while they are being defined. Security is always a catch-up game, right? It's a cat and mouse. Someone delivers something new, has a 0 day, we try to patch it. We come up with a new way to secure it, someone comes up with a new way to break it. Here's the same thing. So we should prepare at least leading up to that point and try to understand where we are now. This is the only thing we mostly can do. I talked a lot, and I see a few faces that are questioning, other faces were confirming. Does anyone have a question? I'm happy to take any questions that you have, or if you have something you would like to know a bit more about. Come on, someone has a question, I'm sure. No one, really? Fine. So who feels like quantum cryptography is something he understands right now? Like, raise your hand, I'm very curious. You're cheating, I know you knew already before, that's cheating. Oh, I saw a hand there. Okay, fine. All right. So then my last bit of information I would like to share is I think I saw that. I said the same thing last time. With a great problem comes a great opportunity. We can tackle this problem now, and we can start thinking on how we tackle cryptography. A lot of people still store their data randomly. They don't think about how it is stored, how it is transferred. And that's also something when we come back to the human part of this. Think about your data. It is your property after all. You store it, you are the owner of it. You should be the master of it. And most of the times you're not. So when you store your data and you encrypt it, try to be mindful of how you store it, where you store it, what you do with it, who has access to it. Don't just give it away. There you go, question, please.
Simple question. What would be the cost for businesses and organizations to implement the new post-quantum cryptography standards that you have discussed?
Sorry?
Can you give me the mic? That's maybe the... Of course.
Oh, it's off. Try again.
Hello.
Perfect. There you go.
Okay. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I just have a simple question, which is maybe not simple, but I'm pretty sure you are the right expert to answer it. Fingers crossed. So what will be the cost for organizations? Will it be businesses, but also public organizations to implement the new standards in terms of post-quantum encryption that are already discussed at NIST? And I know that because we were last week at a French event, and some group, large companies such as Thales, but also some university, especially in Europe, are already working on that, and we had the second round of proposals. But that means that today we're already fighting and struggling to have encryption adopted by anyone, large company, but also SMEs. So what would be the cost to implement a new standard that's not even useful today, but maybe in 10 years or more? Thank you.
Well, the cost, it's probably my consultant answer now, but it depends. If you are let's say you're a bank, you're not a retail bank, but you manage funds, you don't have cards. Your cost is okay, because you will have still to replace, as you manage Thales, let's say you will have different physical hardware that you use to encrypt data, endpoint encryption for your communication. And one of the slides also mentioned, I didn't go into it because it is a very vast topic, but you have quantum communication. So you can in real time detect if someone is intercepting your stream of data, because let's just leave it at that. You can have 2 points. Right now, you can't know if someone intercepted your connection. If he has your public key, well, he can listen in. With quantum cryptography, that's no longer the case. So if you change out your hardware on how you communicate, your cost becomes manageable, because you have, from our current understanding, a completely bulletproof solution how you communicate, and no one can intercept it. Then you just have to tackle your storage. If you only have digital data, you change your ciphers and how. So first you decrypt what you have now, you re-encrypt it with a new cipher, and you're set. That's fine. If, however, you are a retail bank and you have to distribute cards, or your card readers, they need to understand the new chips, the new ciphers. Now cost becomes really high, because you have to replace almost all of your legacy hardware very fast, because the moment it hits, as I mentioned, too late. So the standards that are discussed now, the vendors will come up with something, hopefully, before someone comes out and says, oh yeah, we have 4,000 logical qubits working, here's a showcase, we solve this in 10 seconds, takes 10,000 hours or years on an HPC nowadays. So you have to replace all of it. So the cost can be from minuscule, by changing software settings, to really high, changing your entire infrastructure. That's why you should start thinking about how you use cryptography now, before you move into the future, so that you have this estimation and you know that you have to adapt over the years, and you can make a plan. Because if you have no plan, then it becomes more expensive. Or you have a breach, and then it becomes very expensive. Any other questions? I see my time is flashing, so if you have a question, I will be available off stage for questions. Otherwise, I thank you for your time. I hope it was interesting, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much, Andre. I think that was very high note to end our 2021 European Security Forum. We hope you have enjoyed this day as much as we did. Thank you to all our speakers here physically, the ones in remote that joined us today. And thank you to all of you, our attendees. It has been a great pleasure for Sheila and me to be today your Masters of Ceremony. And we hope to see you next year.
Thank you.